All right. Let me go ahead and make sure everything's functioning here. Welcome to Min to Max 20, and also welcome to our first new segment, Tavernside Talks, where we will be discussing some mechanics of D&D and how we've kind of homebrewed some things, tweaked some things, and then this is actually our very first episode, which we'll be talking about all things actions. I'm obviously joined with my illustrious counterpart DMs, Logan and Connor. And Connor actually will be running our next arc starting on Sunday. And so if that has any interest, go ahead and mark your calendars for that. It should be a devious one, as you can tell. But yeah, we also are accompanied by my retired military work dog Knox, who you can see down there in the corner. He's just chilling. Hopefully he sticks around. He might just dip out. He's a dog. He does what he wants. So, but yeah, honestly, the only really announcements is that we do have a new arc starting next couple days, and Connor will be running it. It'll be a lot of fun. It's gonna be horror themed. Hopefully our characters survive. He has no intention of letting them, but sometimes we're smarter than him, so.
Oftentimes you're smarter than me. So.
Yeah, we'll see. But if y'all want to go... Exactly. If y'all want to go ahead and just kind of chat for a second so I can make sure all audio is good, and then we will get this show on the road.
Oh, I'm happy to chat for a second.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually, for the segment that I will be running, I have finally decided on the theme for it.
Oh, are you gonna drop it now? Gonna drop it public? Because I have no idea.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to drop it public.
Bro, no spoilers. No spoilers.
It's the theme. It's the themology.
Theme, man.
Let me adjust a little bit of things here just to make sure everything is good.
There we go. This feels good.
Feels right.
I do like the lighting, the like red.
Those shades are of the abyss, bro. I can't see through. Those are like void shades, bro.
My poker shades.
Those are in the abyss. Also one more thing of note too, for during our Tavernside talks, is when we can kind of, we're kind of just chit chatting, hanging out, and so feel free in the Twitch chat to obviously, throw your ideas, notes, whatever. We'll definitely be looking at that. And then also for the YouTube video, feel free to post things in the comments and we will get to those as well, or have conversations amongst each other. That is kind of why we were doing this a little bit, kind of involvement in the community. So, but I think audio wise, we are all set to go here. So let me go ahead and get this figured out. Okay. So unless you guys have any other things to discuss or say, I think we should jump right into this.
I was excited to hear what the theme of Logan's little arc was. But
okay,
that's not happening right now.
Well, I think we should. Hey, you gotta have some suspense in your life.
Yeah.
I've never had suspense a day in my life.
Okay, well, holy shit. All right, so without further ado, let's go and just jump right into this. So, like I was mentioning earlier, our topic for discussion for this evening will be all things actions. And so we'll go through actions, bonus actions, and reactions. And then we'll kind of open the floor to each other and just kind of discuss kind of maybe kind of tweak mechanics if other people have good ideas. Just basically just kind of shooting the shit, going back and forth, and hopefully kind of making some kind of fine-tuning some of these things. So let's go and start with our actions portion. So honestly, for this, I really didn't have too much. So I know Logan, you mentioned that you might have some stuff. So why don't you kick this off for us real quick, and so we can
go ahead and kick it.
So, for D&D, obviously players can take actions during combat to interact with objects or something like that. But a lot of the time, when you take an object interaction or a skill check interaction, it's a very minor thing that you do, and it dumps your entire action into it. Something that I like to run in my games, and I would like to see more in D&D, is more uses for your action outside of just combat stuff. So if you're in a tavern, getting some benefits from flipping over a table or something like that, because a lot of the skill check actions that you can do are like, okay, here's a little bit of information I give you. And I think that kind of makes it a little bit harder as a player to be like, well, do I really want to use my action this turn to do this? And a lot of the time, I know in a couple of campaigns I've played with you guys where we just ignore skill checks as an action and we just allow people to be like, hey, I'm going to make a perception check as this action. So I think it would be something I would like to see kind of modified is when you are taking that skill check action on your turn, being able to do something a little bit more with it rather than just oh, I'm gonna flip a table, and then that does nothing for you in the gist
Oh,
of it.
okay. So like, yeah. So like, you're just doing like it's so involved. It like takes basically all of your turn to do one little thing, instead
Yeah,
of like,
right,
okay,
yeah.
yeah. And that's why I agree too, because I was actually looking through the player's handbook, and I was looking, because before I like started writing anything out, I wanted to make sure I didn't overlap, or if I did overlap, there like I could maybe modify something in there. And yeah, literally like they don't have very many like options. Like they kind of encompass a lot of things under like certain categories, you know, like they have use an object, but like it's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, and then so
Yeah, go ahead.
it comes down to like discretion of pretty much the DM of being like, well, use an object. What does that mean that they can do on their turn to use
Exactly.
an object? And then battle maps, if you set something out, a lot of the times you'll have cool systems set out in your battle map, but because use an object is just, oh, well, you can use an object, it makes it really difficult to be like, oh yeah, the player's gonna outsmart me by using their action to instead do something in the battlefield.
Right.
Exactly. Also, welcome in, Gray. Yes, we have Nox here with us. Of course, Tavern is only as good as its dog. So
That's true. That's why I didn't bring any of my mom's dogs on screen.
okay, maybe we can start adding. Maybe there'll be more dog cams than there'll be actually anything else. But yeah, Connor, if you want to speak to that, for sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I think because I know there's a specific combat somewhat recently in one of our home games, or I think it was you, Logan, that was during the combat because of how the combat was running. There was certain tasks that needed to be kind of completed during, and so there's a similar thing like skill check was happening while combat was happening, and I think speaking to DM's discretion, there's times where I like to use the part in the combat of free object interaction. I like to use that very loosely as kind of like a catch-all for certain things. Sometimes like for instance, like I want to kind of like perceive the combat or something. If I want it to be like sometimes like, hey, just go ahead and do the skill check and then continue combat. Or other times like what you're doing is going to have a significant impact or take in my opinion, running the game will take at least a meaningful amount of time in that 6 seconds you're allotted. So there's times like that will either be like that'll be like your object interaction depending, or if it's a bigger thing, which I believe this is how I did it then, it's like you can use your full bonus action to do this because it was a rather involved check. If I recall, it was like the Star Wars game, I think it was like a force check essentially in the middle of that. Yeah.
And so it's like unless since you're not using your action all of that time and effort to do it, it's more of like doing disadvantage when I was using it as a bonus action, which was something I really enjoyed too, because you can still interact with items even without using the action to interact with an item, but whatever you're doing is with disadvantage because you're trying to rush it instead of doing it, which I do like to as a mechanic of being like, yeah, you can do this still and you can try and do it quicker, but if you're going to do it quicker, then you're going to have the negative effects of trying to do it quicker.
Yeah, I think playing with advantage and disadvantage in those ways, it's like this feels like a bit much, well, do it with disadvantage. Like that's something I like playing with a lot. It's like, and also
like
on
rushing
the same token, if you're being very exactly, but also if you're like taking time, you're doing it in an intelligent way, like if someone wants to use a full action to do it, depending what's happening. Like, if you want to invest that much time to make it a certainty, you're rolling with advantage. Or at least the DC's lower or something.
Yeah.
It's very situational, but, we're all three DMs talking about it, so
yeah.
I think we're all familiar with that.
Well, I think using an object in, like, that realm of action is honestly one of the most, like, non-linear things. Like, you can't even, unless you wanted to make, like, a 15-page PDF of, like, every single thing that you could possibly do with that, and, like, give it like characteristics as to how you pass it. Like that's just one of those off the cuff things as a DM you just have to feel like just like you roll with. You just tell someone some shit based on circumstance, and that's like one of the few things that you honestly like that you just kind of have to just do on the fly.
That being said, certain things should not be allowed as a free object interaction. For instance, somebody picking up and priming a grenade is not a free object interaction, as that has been described many times.
Well, I will. Okay, just the preface too for the audience too. Connor's also running. It's D&D 5e space or what is it? It's
the system's Star Wars 5e.
Star Wars 5e,
system, but it's not the Star Wars setting, but still functionally.
Yeah, so he's used that, and he's running a space kind of like sci-fi game, and so that's why he mentions priming a grenade, because obviously there's a lot of technology and technical things.
I'm running the next session, buddy. There's going to be hand grenades everywhere.
But honestly, I think other than that, I feel like the majority, and then there's obviously like for instance, there's the hide action, but for the rogue, there's certain things that change that and whatnot. Oh, we're losing the pup. We're losing the pup. Maybe he'll come back. I think everything else for the most part, I would say, is fairly well placed when it comes to the action category. Which I think it's funny that ready is actually the action for like I hold my action, but it's actually just ready. But like I like how like it's just become kind of like I'm holding my action, and that's just the equivalent of what ready mechanically is.
There's one thing with actions, and Logan and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday, that I just like. I haven't done it yet, but borrowing from Pathfinder, I read about this, and I like the idea of trying it for a D&D, and it's pretty much doing 2 rounds of combat priming a spell. Like if you want to try to do a spell, you want to try upcasting it to a spell slot you don't have, or you want to try to just like get some effect that technically is not on your sheet. Yeah, roll an Arcana check, and if you nail that, you have to hold that action and consume pretty much 2 actions, 2 turns of your action. If it's like going to be that critical, or you think you're going to get that much of a benefit from it. You're spending a whole turn as a sitting duck holding concentration. But if it works and you get it off, depending on the situation, like you're holding, for instance, like for no reason in particular, like a fireball. If you're holding that, say you're level 2, or sorry, no, you only have 2nd level spells or something. It's like, hey, I just, my character's building up to this or something. It's like, I want to take a shot at trying to do that. Depending on the situation, and if like that was a pre-discussed thing with my players, I'd let them, go ahead and try to cook it. Go ahead and try to cook that spell, gather up as much, arcane force or however you're describing it in the game. And sit there a whole turn, use 2 of your actions, and if nothing hits you and you're able to get it off your predetermined spot, go ahead and blast it.
That's actually pretty cool, and I think that that's something we can definitely have like discussion in combat when it comes to our combat discussion, because I actually have a lot of cool ideas that would kind of allow that or kind of bleed into that kind of nicely, and I think that's definitely something that we'll discuss in a later episode.
I got one more thing before we
go ahead.
On, if we're going.
Well, so I have one action. It's literally like 2 seconds of talking. So go ahead.
Oh, go for it. Actually, you can do that one.
Okay, so the only thing, and I'm actually going to go ahead and now bring up my my Google Doc that I have literally everything in, and so I will go ahead and bring that up for the
that's why I
brought out PowerPoint.
Yeah. Well, also just because like I had mentioned earlier, it's kind of nice for people to be able to read along. I feel like that helps me, especially if people are saying something, and then I'm like, what? I'm not gonna read the overview because that's just for my own sake. But the only thing that I really like to think of when it came to actions that I feel like needed to be highlighted outside of the game mechanics is administering a potion. And so I wrote, due to the involved process that is required in force feeding a creature a liquid substance, administering a potion to a creature requires an action. Now that is obviously kind of contrary because most people, so taking a potion on your own resolve and administering it are 2 different things. We'll talk about that when we get to bonus action, but I did want to highlight that in at least for how I rule it, and I'm sure like most of us do that, is like if you're going to administer a potion to say someone is unconscious, or I mean if they're that's usually the only time you're going to administer a potion is when one of your homies is down. It's very rare that you run up to your homie just and you're like while in the middle of like casting a spell you start like force feeding them.
Just underhand like a glass bottle, hope you hit him in the mouth, hope it breaks.
Yeah, and then just like they start licking it up and it's just blood. So I think that's
take as much damage as you heal them.
I think that just unequivocally makes sense because of the time. Like if you're obviously trying to like force it down, force someone to consume a potion, that's like it obviously will take an action. But that's like the only thing like outside of the like rules as written when it comes to actions that I wanted to highlight. So do you want to take it back, Logan, or talk about it?
On that topic, something that I rule in my games, my home games at least, is you can take items off of other players if they are actively around you, but that also takes an action to like go out of your way. Say you need to pick up a potion to administer it to someone else that you have down, but you don't have any on you. You can use your bonus action to like go through and take it off of them, but I usually make it an action to take something off of another player because you're both in the middle of combat, and you're trying to like run by and snag a potion as they're moving. And so I like the administering it to someone else as an action because it's just, oh hey, I don't have these resources, they have it on them, but I have to spend my turn going through their bag and being like, where is this potion that they have, because you don't know where everything is.
I think
just before we expand onto Logan's thing, I just want to say that duo of what you guys just described makes a very interesting mechanical difference for like a fighter's action surge. Like instead of like getting on in those hits, it's like we need to get the cleric up. Like I'm gonna like grab this potion off a body, action surge, feed him. You know? Like,
yeah, exactly.
That just creates like something that's normally super linear, which is just like I'm just gonna hit the shit out of this guy. I'm gonna hammer him down. To just like, oh, I'm gonna use that same resource to do something more utilitarian, which I think is pretty interesting.
Right.
As
100%.
the diversity of, instead of an enemy just being hard because an enemy is chunky, combat becomes more difficult because there's variables inside combat that you have to be like, okay, I need to think about this, and I need to go and spend multiple turns or multiple actions making sure that this player gets up.
Right, and I also like the fact that like I kind of like also in some ways that like it kind of because obviously you can't role play or explain every single aspect of like adventuring and kind of interact with each other. So like I almost kind of like that depending on your characters, obviously, unless you have someone super closed off, it almost like gives you like the kind of like hidden details of you guys kind of discussing where gear is, and then like like say you start digging into someone's backpack, like the wizard has a backpack on trying to cast a spell and like rummaging through his shit, like trying to like take things out, and like he told you something's in there, but you're like, I gotta find it, and he's like, okay,
where is it? Why do you have so many books in here?
Yeah, he's
what
just
is
like,
this?
he was like
You're trying to go through Sir Denrick's bag. It's nothing but empty wine bottles.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No wonder
Is
he's
there a
failing
lizard in
stealth
here?
checks.
Yeah, for sure. So I do like that, and I think at the end of this, I want to like kind of more admin. I want to like take some of the things that we talk about, and I want to type them out too, so I can add them to my PDF. So I'll take that for sure. But yeah, that's really all I have for actions. If there's anything else, obviously y'all want to highlight.
I have one more. It's kind of minor, and I'll go over it again when we talk about the combat stuff.
Okay.
But it's actions that martial classes can take. You mentioned it, that it's just the action that you take as a martial class is you swing your weapon twice.
Right.
Or you swing your weapon up to 4 times depending on what martial class you are. A rule system that I've built in and that would be interesting to see with different ones, and you did it a little bit with the Frost Trail arc, was how all like martial classes gain maneuvers so that you have a little bit of extra stuff. What I really like doing is giving martial classes the option to forego 2 attacks to do like, I want to do a stabbing attack that pushes them back a little bit or puts them into a grapple or something.
Okay.
And so giving martial classes more diverse options with their action rather than just having the martial class be able to swing twice. Because if you're not a spellcaster, you're pretty screwed on what you can do for your turn. There's
Exactly.
like 1 or 2 things.
No, 100%, and I think that's one of those things is like where, and that's kind of where I start to get. That's where I kind of start to get into a little bit more of bonus actions and reactions, and that's why I have more stuff for that. But I would agree. I think that's one of the most lackluster things, and I will say I've been watching a little bit of other people's channels on going over the Unearthed Arcana for the upcoming I think 2024 Player's Handbook and everything. And there are, I will say, a lot of potential upcoming, what's the word, updates to a lot of classes and features, and I will say, like, because obviously we've homebrewed some things, like obviously you're mentioning where I added maneuvers to just in general to certain classes. They are adding some things that I feel like will definitely pick up the slack for some martial classes. I honestly think though, because I watched them go over fighter and nothing really stuck out to me, so I think keeping fighter maneuvers like permanently a thing will probably stay consistent, but Rogue has some overhauling, Monk has some overhauling. But we're kind of getting off topic. But anyway, I think that they're definitely trying to address that. But I do think that like it's just so like you have the wizard and like the actions for a wizard or a spellcaster are just so much greater than, at least it feels that way because of the diversity of range. Obviously, your melee classes they get like their 4 swings in, and it overall your average is better for damage. But it's just like throwing a fireball or polymorphing something is just so much more fun.
Yeah, and something like, go for it if you want. Just really, if you have like, if I have a maul and I'm swinging it down and I'm like, oh, instead of taking 2 attacks, I'm going to specifically try and hit someone right in their leg and make it so that they lose movement. That would be a really cool thing to be like, I'm going to spend 2 attacks. It's basically a spell, but it's a spell for my martial weapon. It's more be like going into a fighting style with it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Connor.
I think that ties a little bit into the combat discussion, which I understand we want to kind of save.
Yeah, I agree.
But that is something that I think I used, again, I think with you somewhat recently, which is, I didn't make it so it was, I don't think I consumed 2 actions, or 2 attacks, but it was like, you can try to target a specific part of the person, depending on what you want mechanically, getting different advantages here and there. But it's a much higher AC.
Yeah,
like,
I
That's-
really like that as a ruling.
That's
That
what
is
I
one
was
of my
actually gonna say
favorite
too, Connor. I was gonna say that I feel like because if you only have one action, like what do you do for that? So I think honestly, just making the AC higher or giving a penalty, I think is the best way to kind of rule that. So yeah, you do get an effect, but you're not like nullifying whole attacks, because I mean, you take 2 attacks, one's harder and you miss, it still feels like, you know, you're trying something cool. Or if it connects, obviously, then it works out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and then that's all I got for actions.
That's all I got for actions. Honestly, I'll probably go through. Go ahead, Connor.
I was gonna say my thing for actions just tie back into bonus actions if you want to do that. Just because it's something that you discussed.
Yeah, so I kind of
think-
So let's go ahead and bring it down to bonus actions. I feel like there are some that like kind of caveat and kind of go back and forth. So let's just go and shift the topic down to bonus actions.
Sure.
So actually, I'll go ahead and leave it blank for now until I discuss what I have specifically. But yeah, we'll go ahead and shift over to bonus actions. So Connor, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, just what you just said a little bit made me think for the potion specifically. Like, hey, I wanted to consume a full action, pour it down the gullet. Something that, again, the insanity of that the Star Wars 5e player's handbook has, for one, no structure and no real reason for it to be as bonkers as it is. But one thing I like that a lot of things they have for their backgrounds is certain things that like backgrounds give you significantly more stuff. So I like the idea of, for one, the potion, hey, this takes full action. But if you wanted to overhaul some backgrounds, like say you had like a medical background or something, maybe you did that with a bonus action now. You know, like things like that, like just like they're not like a huge thing, not like this is going to come up every combat. But when it does come up, it's meaningful. It's because you spent however many years, your character spent however long they were before they got to the table, you know, actually honing a craft related or unrelated to what they normally do.
You know, and it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because I was actually just thinking about, I think it'd be kind of cool if like, and then this is probably just a different topic altogether, but just going off of that, I think it'd be cool if there was more like, you know, because people want like homebrew magical items usually to start out. It'd be really cool if we started like kind of widening that horizon of like homebrew like features for characters. I think it'd be cool. And obviously I think that would be able to give them more action economy too, if you had like bonus action, or like what you're saying is where you're modifying something where like, because I really liked it was when for Axov in the Frost Trail, he was a mastermind rogue, and he can give the help action from 30 feet away and as a bonus action. So it's really cool that you can shift that, and just like that you can kind of move things around like that. So it is cool that classes will do that. I just feel like some of the agency is just not as in depth as it should be, because like having to choose a whole subclass that gives you one more bonus action. I mean, the rogue obviously gives a bunch of different ones, but like sometimes like you get one ability you can use once a long rest and it's a bonus action. It's like, dude, cool, my bonus action economy went up by one time for this whole day. And so it's like, it'd be cool if we like kind of broaden that out with character backgrounds like you're mentioning.
Absolutely.
What I started to implement in one of my home games to try and like test that out, and on that same vein, is rather than doing backgrounds traditionally from the book where you're like, oh, I was a folk hero or something like that, and I get this equipment and these benefits, is when I've been doing backgrounds based off of backstories. So whatever you brought up to me in your backstory, we can work on you being like, oh man, I used to run like, for my character in our Star Wars home game, I used to run a lot of heist. And so it makes sense for me to be better at lockpicking as a background thing. It was part of my background that I took anyways, but if that wasn't an option and that's what I was doing a lot of before I went there, it would make sense for me to like, oh yeah, I'm better at lockpicking. I can do lockpicking while we're on like a time crunch because I've spent years doing that in the past, and then it's not as linear for choosing like, oh, I'm going to do this background because I want these specific features. It's more, this is what my character did, so I came into the adventuring party with these features already attached to me.
Yeah.
I think in general, making characters and making your backstory with just like the mechanical background in mind, just because sometimes I'll do like make a character like, I want to be an outlander, but I'm playing a wizard. And those two don't traditionally make sense. Just using that to feed into the backstory, kind of reverse of what you're talking about, I think it's still a fun way to go about it, because then your backstory becomes weird and a little archaic, as most of my characters are.
Well, I think even just with character creation of this upcoming arc too, like I I kind of made my backstory, and that kind of was like, oh, hey, like, can my background be this? And I want these skills. And you were like, yeah, that totally makes sense. I like that so much more than like going to the book and be like, all right, I'm a charlatan. And these predetermined skills. And it's like, yeah, my character never did that, but like it falls into this category. So it's just weird. So yeah, I think that I definitely agree. I think that having the background kind of influence it is definitely or your backstory influence your background is definitely cool, especially for your skills. We're just all over the place.
Yeah, there's no way it wasn't gonna.
It's true. That's D&D. You only talk about one thing. It's like everything. So I'm not. I got you.
But yeah, bonus side. What do you guys got for your bonus?
I do have actually something.
Don't have a lot for this. I do got reactions though.
So I have okay, so biggest one for me is consuming a potion. Potions usually do not contain all that much liquid, do not require a sustained amount of effort to administer to oneself, thus consuming a potion is a bonus action. I feel like we run with that a lot. D&D as written is action, which this is my thing, and I don't remember if I think I might have heard this somewhere, but I don't recall necessarily. But in my opinion, it's like if your whole action is to consume a health potion and then you don't do anything or move away from the threat, your whole turn or all those hit points you regained are immediately negated because your entire turn was taking a health potion. And then if you take any amount of damage, like if it's a basic health potion, it's like 2d4, yeah, or is it 4d4? No, it's 2d4.
2d4 plus.
Yeah,
2d4 plus.
You get like 8 hit points, and that's your whole turn, and then you get smacked, and you lose 12 hit points. So it's like that would completely nullify the whole point of a health potion. So I think that kind of making consuming a potion a bonus action almost makes it a little bit more of a passive thing. Where I mean, health potions aren't necessarily cheap, and so like if you do like stock up on them, then obviously you can spread them around. It kind of gives people more healing. What's up, Connor? You want to say something?
I'm a big contrarian here. I like potions as an action.
Okay.
I like only because well, for one, I understand your point fully, which is like I'm gonna chug this. If I get hit, it negates it probably more so, and you didn't dish damage out that.
Exactly.
Right, presumably.
Exactly.
Unless you had some weird bonus action thing going. But well, I like two things. I have not done both of these at the same time, but it's for one, limiting what has opportunity attacks. Opportunity attacks, I don't like that they are just blanket across the board.
I've actually
like
have something for that
too. Fighters, paladins, barbarians. If you want to give clerics even more bullshit, give it to them. Probably a ranger because they need love, and I'm biased.
Yeah, true.
But like,
ranger could love that.
Yeah.
Dude, give ranger a tank. He's still underpowered. But just with that, like being able to like disengage from combat, because D&D combat, we've all kind of seen it where somebody walks and they're next to a stump. And 10 rounds of combat happen, they're still next to the stump with 7 bodies around them.
Yeah.
Because opportunity attacks, they're locked in, and people build builds around that, and that's totally fine. But when that becomes kind of the only way forward for martial classes, that isn't cool. Necessarily. But if you're able to, like, oh, I'm going to take a step back away from combat, your friends have to kind of move in, protect you a little bit, you're going to pop a potion. And then you have your bonus actions if they're a little bit more freeing. And then you're going to have but it's like, hey, if you want to stop and heal yourself, take the time to heal yourself. And also, like, chugging's hard. It takes me longer than 6 seconds to drink something, you know. Like,
well, so it's interesting. So like when I feel like conventionally, unless it's a massive potion, I feel like potions are generally not like the biggest. Like, I don't know. Like when I think of a potion, usually it's like a vial or something, or like, do you have a potion? Do you have a potion bottle?
I do actually.
Okay, go grab it.
Go grab it.
Potions as like decorations.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've got a whole variety of them.
When I think of it like that, like when I think of it, it's
I'm
just
gonna get a timer ready. We know what's about to happen.
Yo, he's in a. So it's just all right. Yeah, you better line them up, and then we'll see how fast you can chug them. This actually ties into something that I want to change for combat, which I don't want to reveal necessarily right now. But I think, and I like your ruling too, and I think that like it obviously compiles too, because if you're getting rid of certain things, like if you're kind of narrowing opportunity of attack, I think that obviously then makes potions as an action work. I do have a reaction coming up actually for kind of making opportunity of attack a little bit different, but I think either way, I think it just depends on how overall everything kind of combines together. I also just am a fan of like, if my characters can heal, I can hit them more. So like if you can down a health potion and also have your action to do other things, I just think like, more health, the more hit points you have, the more you can stay in the combat, and gives you more agency, on top of the fact that my monster can just start clobbering you again. So
there's that for sure. Part of it for me is, the 6 seconds is a big mark for potions, and those are there's a lot of juice in those potions, baby. But before he even does what
I'm not
gonna,
drinking this.
I
I'm
want to
not
pressure
drinking
you
this.
a lot. If it was here, I'd do it. I'm saying that.
No, these have been outside for a while as a design.
I think I
thing.
made most of them. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think something like this, I could not drink in 6 seconds. Something like this, I definitely could. This is traditionally what I think when I think of health potions.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I would say that's
It's like this, and this is drinkable in 6 seconds.
I think it's drinkable in 6 seconds, but also bonus action movement, potentially reaction.
Movement, reaction.
okay.
So-
all right. Hey, I'm just gonna.
Why?
Well, hold on. This is the thing, and this is actually kind of. I'll just throw it in because we're kind of all over the place anyway. So I will say this, and I'll re-highlight this on our combat talk. But I will say I am considering, and then I actually kind of want to give a little bit of feedback. We'll save feedback for later, but I think it would nullify. It would also kind of help my point of making a bonus action to consume a potion. Is I want to make rounds in combat 10 seconds instead of 6.
Which I think makes plenty of sense.
I think that would honestly free up a lot of things. It would make doing more on your turns make more sense. Because even if you count to yourself 6 seconds, you're like, okay, and you count to yourself 10. If you count out each individual second, and you kind of quantify it to actions in combat, it makes more sense. And you're like, okay, and I feel like it's a better whole number. But we won't get too much into that. But I think that if moving it to 10 seconds, it would make consuming a potion like you've shown us, Logan, like that would be a little more reasonable and still get in there and still do your thing.
Yeah, just like you have on a walk around, you have to chug it as you're swinging sword. You know, just
I
do have a question about that too, as a part of the bonus action of applying a potion to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to poisons and oils to weapons, would it also, do you run that into the same mechanic of as a bonus action, I could coat the outside of my blade in a poison if I had one, or is that a full action itself?
So I actually have my own section. So I've actually segregated all of these different things in my. Yeah, I know. Hold on. I've actually segregated all these different notes in my Google Docs, and so I have potions, I have salves, and I have oils. And so generally, salves and oils. Actually, I think I got rid of salves because oils are more just make more sense. But yeah, oils are different. Like if it's like an oil of silvering, that is not it does not fall into the category. And I try to be good about listing how long it would take for you to coat something too.
Gotcha.
Which I'll talk about. We're actually talking about we're talking about right now bonus actions. We just talked about actions, and now we're kind of going in and talking about bonus actions. We're now currently discussing because I rule in my home game, and this is someone in the chat. Welcome in, by the way.
Yeah. I figured.
Yeah. I'm ruling it that consuming a health potion or consuming a potion is a bonus action. That way, it frees up players' actions, and so it kind of gives them more agency on their turn. But yeah. So what was I saying? Oh, oils. But yeah, I usually just try to determine how much of time an oil would take to apply, because some of them could be about armor, swords, arrows. It's just different volume. And so that's where I kind of will leave those out. I will say when I do make potions a bonus action, I do generally think about it more in the terms of health potions. Because obviously you have other potions that can do kind of crazy effects, and depending on the potion, it could be being a bonus action could be a little bit more. I wouldn't say broken, but it could be a little bit more overpowered. But generally, I feel like if you're consuming a potion in combat, it's usually a health potion. So I haven't had any issues with it thus
Potion
far.
of haste, baby.
It's
Crack
true.
that open, start
It's true.
swinging.
It's true.
Fire Giant's Potion of Strength is one that I used recently too. Gives you a strength of 25 for a minute, and using that as a
Holy shit.
dude.
What you just said validates Jared going 10 seconds for combat.
That's
Because,
what I-
6 rounds of this man going just punching through a castle
Exactly.
instead of 10 rounds.
And then something like that too, I feel like if you drink that, there's obviously going to be an effect where it takes a little bit longer to drink, because that potion like that probably burns a little bit too going down
Probably
your throat,
chunky.
and yeah, it's probably a little bit thicker and stuff like that. So I think ruling for potions, it's a little weird because there's some potions that I don't mind. I think having them as a bonus action, health potions specifically, because obviously your players aren't going to have 40 health potions on them because they're super expensive, and so using those materials as a bonus action is not too bad. But then yeah, something like a fire giant's potion, I don't want my player to just drop it as a bonus action and then have 6 more turns afterwards where they're just going absolutely ham, unless they like prepared for it before combat started and they drank it as they were starting. That makes a little sense, but I don't want them just to be like strength 25. What?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so Sapachu in the chat said, I separate my potions in 2 tiers, lesser and greater. Lesser needs a bonus action, and greater needs a full action. Why? Because the volume is almost doubled, and then I make potion types exclusive to greater, like haste. That actually, I feel like, makes a lot of sense. I feel like that also,
yes.
that just honestly makes it, exclusive to where you can kind of then like monitor things so that you're not just taking. Because like you were saying, you mentioned like the consistency. Because I feel like health potions are generally more like liquid and less like, thick and visceral, and like the contents of it are a little bit less like
think about
involved.
it like chugging Jello.
Yeah, it's like, well, not for a health
like,
potion.
It's got
Again, man,
down.
this is just what I assume a health potion looks
Yeah, like fire giant strength,
this
dude.
bottle, this liquid, like
Fire giant strength. I expect it to be like the most like thick tar, not like tar, but like just like a
Magma-y
Jello,
kind of,
just
like
gross.
you're like going down.
So,
yeah.
So going off potions or consuming a potion, does anyone else have any bonus actions like homebrewed or adjusted that they want to discuss?
The only thing I can kind of think of, and this is not in the homebrew, it's just been something kind of playing around with. I haven't found a way to make it work that isn't broken, but I'm convinced there is a way. It's allowing certain select first level spells depending on class and what they are, allowing them to be like, you can do like 2 casts, like either a bonus action for like just bonus action.
Bro, are you saying cast 2 spells?
Mommy lets me have 2 spells around. No, it's there is certain spells that are like never used. A lot of them are like utility spells and things like that. So trying to find a way like as we're just talking about like skill checks, we kind of let people use somewhat freely, because like in combat, for one, someone thinking about something situational as like, I want to like roll insight on the spellcaster. I want to see like this champion here. I want to see if he's here of his own volition or he's being like controlled in some way. If someone's doing things like that in combat, I always want to reward that, because you're invested in the story and the dynamic what's happening. So certain things like that, like if you want to try burning a spell like that, like you'd have to have had 2 spells that which is part of the problem. You have to go through every spell.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
List, these spells are all allowed, because very quickly you can go like, sure, Eldritch Blast, and then just boom, 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 and then just all right, the room's dead. Which that's a cantrip, obviously, but allowing 2 different spells, like they would have to be both like utility spells. So like you could do something like investigation and then like terrain manipulation in some way, not like necessarily damage spells, but just like if you want to get creative in combat, allowing 2 spell slot type spells to be used like that, I think is something I'd always want to at least make possible. And I want to make it possible only because I don't think it's going to come up. You know what I mean? I think it's still always going to be better to burn a better spell to do some damage, to move some terrain. But if somebody wants to get creative like that, I want to enable it.
I think that would definitely take playtesting, but I think that they could be cool.
Yeah.
I think like because you are trying to like give them more agency, which kind of what chat's saying too. It's like you don't like, it's more fun to give players agency, right? You don't want them like necessarily having to like decide on 2 things per se. But I think spells are so. Spells can be a lot. They can be a lot, and I think obviously limiting what kind of spells. But like you said, it'd be going through every spell and being like, okay, let's see how we pair these.
The best I could figure is you would have to essentially make a subclass. The best I could figure is making a subclass pretty much around that.
Well, doesn't sorcerer their sorcery points let you do like hasted spells?
They can do dual casting.
Yeah, they
like
can. You can do quick casting too, where you can cast. If you cast a cantrip as an action, you can quick cast a spell as a bonus action, because you can't double spell cast unless one of the 2 is a cantrip. But on that same vein, if you were to use like something like you said, terrain manipulation. If I were to want to use a spell to get a better overview of the terrain and the terrain manipulation together and use the action and bonus action for that, that would be really interesting because it's like, oh, I want to set up a vine trap. So I'm going to use one of my spells to give me a better view of what I'm doing here to have a better angle for this vine trap to be placed out later.
Right. Yeah, and again, like even with what you just described there, super good and super like flavorful in the combat sense, but also, yeah, there's definitely a possibility where that can become very overpowered. But I think like I just like allowing for someone just like, hey, burn through your spells quickly. Like, you know, like you're best in the first 4 rounds of combat. After that, you're gassed. You know, because you're burning spell slots, you're burning your abilities. But it's not necessarily, you're not going, I wanted fireball. You know, you have to be, again, very selective with the spells. But I like that, just like allowing a bonus action to do a lot more.
I guess
again, like a class restriction type thing.
Well, I think
Didn't mean to get very controversial, but here we are.
I think well, I do feel like that you could almost I feel like making it like not, you can't do 2 damage spells. That'd be a good way to kind of off the cuff make it a little bit more balanced. That kind of narrow it down. But I do think, and I think Sorcerer is kind of like, I feel like the origination for a lot of that stuff because they have the meta magic, they have the sorcery points, and so I think but expanding it beyond sorcery would be pretty cool. Chas, I have a solution for that: a modified version of spell scrolls. I don't necessarily know what that would.
I also thinking about it too, on the same vein of like doing something as a bonus action for what we were talking about, doing like an action like, oh, I'm gonna do this, but then if I'm gonna do it as a bonus action, you rush it and you get like disadvantage on it. Or something like spells, you could do a minor. So say you're casting Create Fire or something like that. Usually you have like 10 feet around you that creates a little bit of fire. Maybe lowering that down to being like just 5 feet catches on fire because you're not spending the amount of time to cast the spell as properly, but instead you are going through,
or also maybe exhaustion. Like you start tacking on exhaustion because like you could do that, but it's like you start burning through your stamina very quickly.
It's kind of funny that we all 3 came to different ideas about that particular thing because my first thought was like dual wielding, where you have your offhand weapon, where you don't get your proficiency, you don't get to add on to it, type thing. So I think there's somewhere between the 3 of these ideas. I think there's a pretty interesting class that in my mind plays, or subclass that in my mind plays like an arcane, almost like investigator to some degree.
Are spell scrolls actions?
I believe they are, yeah.
Well, it depends. The spell scroll takes the same amount of time to use as it would take to cast that spell.
Okay.
So spell scroll of Misty Step would take a bonus action to use. And it's just because it's you reading the incantation still, but you just, if you're not a traditional caster, obviously you can't say the incantation yourself, but if you have a spell scroll, you can just read it off.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool. So I think
give it to a barbarian.
What Chad is saying is, so I think like using spell scrolls. So like if like they're saying, so if you do this bonus action spell scroll, you cast a spell as your action. Bonus action spell scrolls. It makes spell scrolls a little more viable because I feel like spell scrolls like they can be cool if they're a really powerful spell or if you're a wizard, obviously. But I feel like that'd be actually a good way to kind of bring spell scrolls a little bit more into like the lower field of play.
That actually is a really fun idea, only because again I just got kind of stuck on this like subclass idea. And if you make like a scribe version of a wizard type thing where you just focus a lot more on the writing component and like spell discovery, and it's like he's making a lot of spell scrolls and just keeping them in the back pocket, you know.
Isn't there a scribe?
Maybe he can only use them as I think there might be.
You can only use spell scrolls if you know how to cast the spell as well, which is a mechanic I didn't know.
Is that really? That sucks.
Yeah.
That's ass.
You found that in there, dude. That's ass. I've never used that as like a ruling.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
I just thought
that sounds like
you read the spell if the incantation is there, man. You can cast the spell.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm still letting Blink to a barbarian. I'm still letting a barbarian read Blink, get confused, shit himself in the ethereal plane.
Yeah, that's
so
what just happened.
So I think there is. I'm not gonna read all of this, obviously. There is a scribe.
No, please.
Oh, here we go, guys. Story time. No. So
never mind.
there is a scribe subclass in the wizard in Tasha's, but I didn't really read all the way through it, and it might adjust spell scrolls, but
It does
Yeah.
not. It lowers the amount of time that it takes you
Yeah,
to
it does.
strike down spells that you know. It allows you to know more in your whole like held spell book and stuff like that, and it gives you a modified spell book. It's a weird
Mid.
subclass. They
Mid.
like
Yeah.
tried, yeah. They tried to add something. They tried to add some cool mechanics, but it's like I don't get that many spell books all that often as a wizard, anyways. Throughout the
Yeah.
entire campaign, I might
Yeah.
learn like 20 total new spells. So being able to do that in half the time, that doesn't mean. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean
it's
shit to
something
me,
that I think most DMs allow to happen in downtime pretty passively,
Right.
right?
Yeah, it's not like.
But
really,
also,
it's not
I think what we're talking about could be a fun patch for that subclass, right?
Yeah, and like add something
Yeah.
kind of more relevant for sure.
Yeah, maybe like as we're saying, bonus action for spell scrolls. Maybe just as much as your proficiency modifier, because can be a pretty powerful thing. And now we're off the track of like, oh, it could be limited to like. I feel like the conversation now is switched to like, you got the scroll, fire it off, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And then not on the topic of
We've
spells
been
and
off topic
stuff,
for a while.
but for
True. Well, I'm gonna get us back on topic here in a second.
yeah, that's I was about to say.
You
That's
there.
where I'm going with this one too, because you mentioned liking something from Pathfinder. I played a 3.5 campaign for a little bit, and there was benefits for catching like being behind someone or catching someone flat-footed. So I'd like to see bonus actions where when you use your movement, you can also use your bonus action to like take the advantage on a person. I'm gonna catch this person off guard, so I'm gonna have like a +2 bonus to hit them because they weren't expecting me to come out of the trees in this kind of area, and being
Right.
able to use your bonus action for like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pocket sand this dude because I see the throw items, and so like doing something like that where it gives you the benefit of being like, oh yeah, I have my movement and I can wrap in my bonus action together to make it a little bit more effective to move rather than just walk 5 feet forward, hit a dude a couple of times, walk 10 feet back, shoot out an Eldritch Blast kind of deal.
And that is a far more reasonable use of the bonus action than anything I said. As far as it is just far more simple. Then also it's just a natural part of combat, as I think we all have a point for marshals where we want them to have more utility and generally be better.
Right.
So like, yeah, the fighter could run at the guy, or also he could like go around this column and kind of like do this wide swing at the back, you know, like something like that, and get an advantage aside from the DM just allowing him to have advantage or something like that. Just like there is something written in the rules that is consistent.
Well, and I think that's where honestly, like in some ways, it's just like you can't write out all the rules. Sometimes you just off the cuff, players something cool, you just do it, you know. And that's where like honestly, that's like the best portions of D&D is when someone's like, I'm gonna do something dope. I didn't even think about this. Yeah, I'm gonna make some weird rule up right now, and like let's resolve it. I think that's honestly
That's
real.
half of DM.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Rule of
half
literally
cool,
rule
Yeah.
cool,
Rule
man.
of cool,
Yeah,
dude.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Nothing breaks my
that
heart
is a-
more. Yeah,
I know,
nothing-
dude.
Well, nothing breaks my heart more than like someone tries to do something like that, but you're just like, no.
Yeah, and it's like,
you're
oh
just
shit.
"Ugh,
Here,
I can't let you throw a tree 50 feet. I'm sorry, man. Like,
Hey man, you ever seen Caber Toss? Man, I might be able to throw a tree 50 feet.
Okay,
not
yeah.
if they're a sorcerer.
Uh,
No, they
yeah.
can't.
Real quick, Sap, thank you for the follow. We appreciate that. Also, I do like how you run it. So they said in a caster can spend a rest in materials to write a single-use scroll. So they can just write scrolls on their own, which I think that's just pretty cool because, like, how do scrolls get written? Everyone just finds them. No one knows who writes them. So that's pretty cool to kind of make that kind of more involved in the
Yeah.
game. And then doing that, you can use as a bonus action. And then, yeah, scrolls, yeah, they explained that if you basically don't know the spell, then you just have a chance to not do it right, which is, like, dog shit.
Arcane
So.
check. Yeah.
Real
Yeah,
quick, I
that's-
have one more bonus action I want to go through. This is a little bit more kind of involved, and then we got to move on to reactions. So,
Yep.
All right, so I have fleshed out here. I'm tossing an item. Bear with me. So there are many instances when tossing an item or object to another creature is needed so something further can be accomplished. To do so requires a bonus action and is subject to the following conditions. If you're within 5 feet, the toss is automatically successful. Within 10, the toss requires a DC 8 strength or dexterity check. In 15 feet, it requires a DC 12 check. 20 feet, DC 16, and it ramps up to 25 to 20 is a 20 DC, 30 is a 25 DC. And then to go through the notes I wrote. So note 1, if a creature has proficiency in either the athletics or sleight of hand skill, they can add their proficiency bonus to the rule. Note 2, the DC and overall success of the attempt can be adjusted at the DM's discretion based on situational circumstances, like we we're just talking about. Obviously, there's a million different things that can happen. The targeted creature on a successful toss can choose Note 3. The targeted creature on a successful toss can choose whether or not to catch the item. If they choose not to catch it, the item falls into a space within 5 feet of that creature. Note 4. If a toss attempt is failed by 3 or less on the skill check, the targeted creature can expend the reaction to try to catch it. See recovering a toss in the reactions category. And we'll get to that when we go to reactions. But I've just noticed that, like, I would say one of the most consistent things that players have asked me is, can I throw this to somebody? Can I throw this? You know, I feel like that's one of those, generally, like, that is, like, more reoccurring than most other things. Most other things, it's like, okay, let me go and rule it right now. But tossing an item, or, like, handing an item, depending if you're, like, within 5 feet, I feel like is generally something that's asked. And so I figured might as well kind of boil it down.
I really like that because I run into that all the time in games that I've run for home games, and recently a home game that I was playing in, whereas like I have something on me that's not useful for me to be holding right now, and it would be way more useful for me to be able to toss it out to a player, but then using my whole action as like the ruling of like, he's 2 feet away from me. It's not going to take me a whole action to pass him over this book or something. So I like making the DC checks to be able to toss it and still make it so you can toss and catch without making it to the point where it's like, oh yeah, now instead of doing all of this, I'm going to toss this minor item to someone.
Exactly.
But it's also like, it's still you're still burning part of your economy to do it, right? You're still using your bonus action, which depending on the class could be a pretty, like, especially if we're talking like the rogue has to, for once in his life, be selfless and give an item to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do a whole ass bonus action to do it, you know. So it's still like it's a cost. You're not just doing it for free, but there is a system in place. And also, I like, my first thought when you were describing it is like somebody else has to use a reaction to catch it. I like that it's like, oh, if it's a failure, somebody could choose to use the reaction to like slide a hand catch. I like that a lot better. So that way, one person's making the commit, the other person kind of just like quick catch, or if they're throwing a chair, maybe not quick catch,
right?
You know, but some.
And that's one of those things, right? And well, yeah. Well, and that's what I was kind of thinking of too. With I didn't want it to be a reaction to catch it, because I think that if someone's burning an bonus action, you're burning reaction to not only throw but also catch. That's too much, I feel like. But I feel like if it were to fail, that's when someone might find it valuable to be like, okay, let me burn my reaction to catch it. Plus, like, instinctually, if someone throws some shit at you and you want it, you just, you know, like, you would try to grab it. And I feel like obviously if you fail to check too greatly, it would be like in no man's land and they just whiff it or they throw it over you or to the side. Whereas like for this, you know, like it usually
goes right in the lava.
If it right between your legs into the crack in the floor. But I feel like with this, you know, because generally usually like I mean how I roll it too is like the closer you get to the closer to the DC that you fail, like it's like you're almost there but not really. So I feel like this is a cool way to kind of make flavor it where like you're almost there, they can try to help, and then if they pass, they pass.
Yeah, I agree with that, where I don't like how polar some of the things can be. It's like you either pass or fail, and then the only extremes are crit fail, crit success.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I do like there's shades of gray between those. Like you threw it at him, but he just like like bounced off his body, you know, like something like that. Where just like, yeah, I mean, like you were pretty much there, but you know, things happen.
Edge of the Empire is it's a different system for Star Wars in general. It's not the Star Wars 5e system, but something that they have that I like as a mechanic is when you roll the dice, you can succeed with disadvantages. So like you succeeded, but while doing so, you accidentally pushed the car too far, and now it's going to like drag a little. Or you could fail with advantages. So maybe you broke your lockpick in the lock, but the lock is like partially already opened and you like jammed it open. So instead of like I rolled a 5 on my lock picking check, I fail and I no longer do it or something. Having it so it's like, oh yeah, you fail with a little bit of like success because you're a rogue. You've been lockpicking for a long time.
Right.
It doesn't make sense for you to just like shatter your lockpick on your first check because you rolled terribly.
Exactly.
Right.
Having that little bit of forgiveness for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, I think that's what D&D 5e was like that's what they're aiming for. They're aiming for these rules that are kind of like, you know, it's very simple to get up and play, but like as you play D&D for longer, you realize like, okay, like, as a DM, you want to give more agency, you want to expand upon it. And that's what I've always loved about Dungeons and Dragons is the fact that it's just so like, it's so it gives you a framework, but you can do whatever you want with it. And so like that, and that's where like I think it's cool. And because like the reason why I say this is because I feel like with that Logan, it would be, you know, it can be a lot more work to kind of give them partial successes and be thinking a lot more on the fly. And so I think that's why D&D and its core like rule book, it does like, it's like either pass or fail, who cares? Or not like who cares, but like, you know, it makes it simple. But, you know, when you become a better DM and you're better at it, then you can be like, okay, let me go ahead and start adding these other things in because you're more experienced with storytelling.
Yeah. As well as in the DM's guide, it literally says these rules are like guidelines and modify them as much as you want. There's a section in the DM's guide that's just like, look, man, we're giving you a framework. Mess with this as much as you want because that's what would make a good game.
Also, a big strength that I think, especially you and I, Jared, I think we both started with 5e.
Right.
And Logan, I think you started earlier than that, right? Or did you still start with 5e?
No, I started, the very first game I played was a homebrew game by Josh, and then after that I played...
Dude, we literally, I feel like, hey, shout out to Josh, bro, because that dude, he got us, he's where we are. Man. He started us all on this, so.
Then I started into 5e pretty much immediately after, and then after my second campaign, I think I started DMing because no one wanted to. So
you had to fill the role, and now here you are playing 16 games a week.
16 games a week, running 4 of them, bro. Finally, no longer the eternal DM. I know when you were like, "Do you want to play?" I was like, "Do I want to be a player?" It's been like 6 years since I've been a player, man.
You want me to play? I'm either gonna make a munchkin who's just gonna be goofy, or I'm gonna shatter your game. You know, you pick.
Vincent, I'm always a goblin, and depending on how much I spec, I'll either break your game or I won't, but we'll see.
Alright, well, man. Alright, dude.
But my only point of bringing up a 5e is like obviously partially Critical Role, partially 5e, partially a lot of factors, but D&D just ballooned in popularity. I think partially because they made it as simple as possible while still being fun.
Exactly.
Like, they made things very streamlined. You're playing a barbarian. Here's all the things you can do with barbarian. And I think every class has their like simple version of their subclass, where it's like you're playing a fighter, here's basic fighter, and then when you get better at it, like, oh, you may want to play Eldritch Fighter now, or maybe you want to play Cavalier as those new editions came out, or those new books came out. But at its core, D&D 5 is just made to be like, hey, like, you never role played before, you never like played any tabletop role playing games. Well, here you go. Here's like a still a comprehensive and deep system, but at its core, it's like super easy to just get into.
Yeah, pick up and play. It's pretty easy to introduce people to, and I think a lot of the complexity comes from the more you get to be a better DM and being able to bring role playing into a lot of like messing with the mechanics based off of the role playing of the thing adds a lot of complexity to it as well.
Exactly.
Right. And then obviously conversations like this exponentially increase the complexity of the game.
Yeah, because then you're like, oh, wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. We could do this. Also, it looks like we also have another small character enjoyer of her with a kobold bard.
That's what's up. I just saw that and I was like, that's what I'm talking about, dude.
There you go, yeah.
The tiny creatures, you know, they never get love, man. Everyone in the party says, they're like, you're gonna play a Gabi, dude? I'm gonna abuse you, bro.
There's nothing better than the small character, tall character combo, because when you could just pick up the small clerk and throw them as they're swinging a hammer, I'll rule cool that every day. I'll let you.
Fury of the Small is one of my favorite abilities that you get as a goblin. You can just on landing an attack as a free action once per day, you can just add your level on top of your damage.
Let's be honest, I think Fury of the Small as a title for an ability is why it's so amazing. Like,
it's so exactly
that right there inherently is just like the best. So.
I don't know what's wrong with me, but I immediately thought Assassin Rogue, Oath of Vengeance Paladin, Goblin. You crit, you smash, you get the sneak attack, you smite, you add the Fury of the Small. You just go ahead and just Nova 140 damage. Call it good. Anyway, I just break things. I just shatter things.
There you go.
Let me know if you do that. Let me know how it goes.
Playtest that.
Move on to some reactions.
Yeah.
Pack tactic. He mentioned that about his kobold. Pack tactics is so
do you get pack tactics as a kobold
I
character?
believe so, but you also get daylight sensitivity.
Even though no one...
So you...
Underdark
if you're
campaigns
at
good.
night and you're around other people, you have advantage, but if you're out during the day, you're just like, please, bro.
End my suffering.
My eyes.
Alright, so...
I now want to make a kobold archer who just is the worst goddamn archer during the day. He just can't.
Hey,
Wait,
dude.
wait, guys. Yeah. And then you could like you roll like a 5 and below, you like hit your allies. Just like you roll that into your character. You're like, yeah, fuck it.
You're doing a solo mission. It goes wide over the mountain, hits your party.
Okay, so let's go and move on to get through all this content before we. Yeah. Okay, so going back to what you were saying, Connor, with the disengage, and so one of the first reactions, and this is kind of what sparked. Actually, these first two are kind of what sparked my like idea to like kind of flesh out a lot of this stuff and have this be our first episode. So reactions, I have disengage as a reaction. While leaving the melee range of an enemy creature or creatures, you can use your reaction to disengage, negating an opportunity attack from one of the chosen creatures. So essentially, to give opportunity attacks still across the board, because I feel like as a player, you know, that is a cool way to like kind of, to reach out, do some damage, and kind of make it so that there is a consequence for leaving combat range. I made it so to disengage the reaction, you can negate one opportunity attack. So if it is a one-on-one fight, you can be like, okay, let me back up. Or if it's like a two-on-one, you can at least negate half of that as a reaction. Obviously, with saying this, disengage as an action is still a thing. You can take your whole turn to be like, no, I don't want any of this. Let me back up. But then this will allow you a little bit more agency to free up, like you mentioned with the stump and like everyone's dead around the stump. It's like I think that's the biggest thing I see with issues for combat recently is just like through the Frost Trail, I kind of made more dynamic maps because in session 0 we talked about having kind of cool, more dynamic kind of, but then like inherently combat gets so bogged down because you're standing there. You don't want to take unnecessary damage, so you're not willing to move. So I figure this will kind of help free it up in some capacity. So y'all let me know what you think.
Yeah, I like that too. We had in the home game of the Star Wars one, there was a very dynamic map, and there was times where I was like, oh, I'm going to disengage here, or not disengage here, but I'm going to move out, and I know I'm taking 2 opportunity attacks, and so rather than being like, oh, I have a reaction to do something to stop that, it was, I'm tanking these 2 attacks. Yeah.
It was just
I just know I'm taking it, and I just have to, so having an option outside of that, of course, the Star Wars 5e system is really good about adding extra options, so...
Yeah,
but those options still have to be apparent, though.
Yeah.
Like, the options still have to be, like, the option might be out there in the book somewhere, but for your specific class of what you have, in that case, it wasn't. Whereas this, it sounds like, the disengage as a reaction, it's like, well, anybody can do it, which also, it does make a lot of sense, where you can, like, square up with somebody and back up. Like, if you're using your weapon, you're using whatever, you can back up, but you can do that with one person, you can't, like, if there's a whole tribe of kobolds, they're still gonna shank the shit out of you. Exactly,
and I feel, because if you're in a one-on-one fight, you're not just gonna be like, all right, see ya, and just like immediately turn around and run. You're gonna be like, okay, let me I feel like you're gonna at least take your reaction. That's those couple of those split seconds to be like, let me see him. Okay, I'm dipping. Obviously, there's like 6 people around you, 500 goblins are trying to shit the shit out of you. Then it's like, okay, you can't watch
miles of work,
miles and miles of orcs, and you're like they're surrounding you, and it's like, okay. So
yeah, also we were just watching Pirates of the Caribbean, which makes me think of this specifically. There's the one scene where they're like in the entire duel, they're walking back and forth as they're fighting, like as they're doing most sword fights in most movies and stuff. You can see them with nice footwork, like working in or working out or doing a couple things to like give themselves space to step back in the middle of that duel. So if you're only fighting one person, you're not just going to be like, oh, I'm leaving and I totally am ignoring what that person's doing. Now you're still very aware that there's that person and you were just fighting them.
For sure, yeah.
To encourage creative movement within opportunity range, add a d4 to attack rolls if you turn behind the enemy.
Oh, so if you're able to like circle around the person. I could see that working if the enemy is also not squared off with you. Because if it's still one-on-one, I think that same thing would apply to the enemy, where as you're turning, they're turning with you.
Right,
getting behind, I wouldn't make a factor. But if it's like, which often happens, especially when people have like the sentinel feat, when you're next to your buddy and you move around and both people are within opportunity of attack range for the guy, you could get behind him for sure. Because there's somebody with a polearm smacking his fucking ass if he tries to do anything else.
And that's kind of something that we will probably discuss a little more when we actually do our like whole combat kind of talk too, because we're trying to keep it a little bit more strictly to just actions here. Which I have another one, which kind of was my little baby that I'm kind of was thinking about for a while. Unless either of you have a reaction that you guys want to bring up.
I like, and again, this is like as a DM something I do with monsters sometimes. especially in lair environments, is legendary reactions.
Oh,
I don't feel like those
interesting.
happen enough because, especially when it comes to big monsters. Obviously, there's the traditional big monster, bunch of minions. You're duking it out. It can be very dynamic, and there's people dealing with ads. There's people dealing with bosses. But sometimes it's nice to have just one big monster. But then you get into the action economy thing, where it's just like there's as many as 5 to like 7 attacks depending on the party and level.
Right.
Going up against like maybe 2 or 3 and maybe a legendary action. But when you have reactions to kind of mitigate, obviously special fun reactions your monster can have, but also like, hey, legendary reaction counterspell, things like that, or legendary reaction, it's like you moved into X quadrant in the layer, which is a problem. Legendary or layer action, this happens, or layer reaction in this
It
case.
kind of also makes them a little more of a presence too, because obviously them attacking at the end of turns is kind of crazy, but like giving them a couple of reactions can also kind of bolster that.
Yeah, it's like you're dealing with something that isn't sitting there for your turn. It kind of like in this case press the party. Like anything you're doing within your turn can still have consequence.
Right.
Yeah,
Which
you're not
I
like
really
waiting
like.
like initiative's done, what's gonna happen? It's like in the middle of your turn, ow. Yeah. It's a monster. It's gonna hit you hard.
And I think that also works well to like not necessarily like it's a fine line between like monsters having legendary actions and reactions. Like you don't have to give a monster legendary actions, but you give them like 1 or 2 reactions legendary, and then you can kind of balance them up and scale them.
Just off of an example that we're all aware of is the was it a Daylight Guardian in the tomb? Was it a Daylight Guardian? Yeah, just him, just because it is a big singular monster we're fighting that is also certainly a skilled sword fighter. Things like that, where it's like he's able to like impose a feint as a reaction or something, or just do something like you're swinging on him. He's going to use one of his legendary reactions to impose a disadvantage on you with his sword play or something like that. Just something like that. Just the only reason I mentioned that is just because I think giving love to marshals goes 2 ways. Giving love to marshals as far as PCs, giving love to marshals as also antagonists.
Exactly, and that's
like they need love both ways.
And that's why, and that's where I kind of like I get kind of like I also enjoyed making this kind of stuff too, because it does balance it out too. It gives you like as DMs more agency for your characters. Like this disengage, it's like you do like for instance Sir Denrick, like you can like if Sir Denrick comes up to you and starts stabbing the shit out of you and you're like getting beefed on, and you can like you can take they also have that reaction to kind of back up and kind of make that movement too, which also is pretty cool. Logan, do you have anything you want to bring up?
I do. So some monsters have reactions like parrying and such, where they can spend their reaction to try and like they raise their AC or something, and that's something where it's speaking of martial classes, where there is, I believe when I was looking through all the spells, I could only find 5 or maybe 6 spells total that are reactionary spells.
Right.
And other than that,
Exactly.
there's just none that exist. But then martial classes pretty much don't have anything they can do. So run into something like a parry, where it's like, oh, I'm going to swing up to either raise my AC against this one attack, because there is like bandit captains have that ability, where it's like it's not super major, but it is something that does help you out to be like, oh yeah, let me use this, or giving players a little more agency on their reaction with just certain actions like that, or like I'm going to try and step out of the way really quick because I see them swinging with a warhammer and I would like to try and take a sidestep, but if you fail the sidestep check you take more damage for leaving yourself open, because then it's not, oh, my turn is over. 30 minutes later, it's my turn again.
Right.
You're not really doing anything other than
you just like on your phone. What happened? I'm down. Okay.
And so.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the reason why I like reactions so much, is it keeps you engaged in the fight throughout the whole thing. Because if there's no like actions or there's no reaction economy, you're just like, cool. Oh, it's my turn. Whereas like you're waiting for an opportunity to attack, and you're like, oh, and then like that's like the highlight of your life when it's not your turn. But it's like adding these things, it makes it so that you can, which actually I'm gonna get to now. Actually, this is a good caveat. Are you finished, Logan, with what you wanted to say?
Yeah. I'm not,
okay, so this is, with that being mentioned, I did make one called Intercede, and there are a couple things in game that actually let you do this, but I kind of thought it'd be cool to make it a reaction for everybody and make it more like a detriment, because there are certain abilities that let you do this, but they're more of like for instance, here, I'll get to that once I read it. Okay, Intercede. While within 5 feet of a creature that is targeted by any weapon or spell attack, While within 5 feet of a creature that is targeted by any weapon or spell attack that targets a single creature, you can use your reaction to intercede on the attack taking their place and moving the targeted creature 5 feet away into an adjacent space. The attack has an additional +10 on its attack bonus, and any damage dealt is then done to you instead of its original target. Note, this reaction cannot be taken if the creature making the attack was stealth or hidden from line of sight. So to summarize, basically, if you're next to somebody, you can use reaction to push them out the way, moving them moving them 5 feet in a direction, and then the attack that they were going to make on the targeted creature gets a +10 to hit, and then you suffer the damage if it hits, or you don't if it doesn't.
So it's similar
like
to
that?
like the shield or the Sentinel Dragon Mark from Eberron. I don't know if you know what that is, or
I don't.
Sentinel where you can swap places with the person
Okay.
and you become the target of the attack. However, for that, the same attack roll applies. So if it doesn't hit, similar to my Cloud Rune that I had,
Exactly.
if it
That's what I was
doesn't
going to
hit, it
mention.
doesn't
Morello.
hit. I like the fact that if anyone can do it, though, it's not like, oh, I'm specialized in making sure that no one else gets hit, like
Exactly.
someone with the Shield
Yeah.
Master is. Instead, you're just like, get out of the
Right.
way, and you kind of take the hit for them.
I like that a lot, especially as you're mentioning, like if someone's hidden or this is a surprise, you cannot do it.
Exactly.
But with the alert feat, somebody doesn't see something coming, the person with the alert feat could, shove them out of the way, take the hit
Exactly.
for them. Yeah.
And I think that, and what I really want to do with this too is kind of give like characters like Sir Denric, where it's like you have such a high AC. Usually your hit points do stay a little bit higher than other people's, and that's kind of like a resource that like everyone else can die around you, and he can have full hit points, and then he's targeted, and then he gets overwhelmed. But I think it's kind of cool to give it's not a guaranteed hit, because I did want to take into the fact that like people do like miss, and so if they were to have roll a 1. And it's still a +10, like they can still obviously miss, but a +10 is so great that generally I'd say, 80% of the time, 90% of the time they'll hit you. So that way, like people who are tanks can almost intentionally use their health as a resource to help their squishy wizards or whatever, and so. Because I was talking to Todd about it, and I was toying with the idea of like you just taking the hit immediately, but then I was like,
The
because
chance is good.
because sometimes things happen where it's like they messed up and it's not your armor deflecting you. It's like the sword got caught on something, an arrow wasn't even on course, and so I want there to be that little bit of room of error that basically makes the creature who is targeting the attack like fumbled something somewhere.
I love the idea of, let me say if you push him out of the way, the arrow wasn't going to hit them, just shove him right into...
Jump right into it. Yeah,
I didn't want to get too far into it, but I thought about adding things, and this is something we can obviously build upon, but that'd be hilarious. Yeah, like if they roll like a natural 1, and depending on the way that you can make it so they still get hit, it'd be
You're
hilarious.
still gonna be like, oh my god. Yeah, 'cause-
You push him to the side. I got you. He hits the actual trap door fall. 30 feet, like,
Yeah. Exactly. I think it'd be.
Damn it!
Yeah, and so I figured I didn't want to go too in depth to flush it out, because I feel like I think it'd be all kind of cool too if you're the creature reacting to, like, you can choose where to push them, whether it's back or off to the side, like off the line. But either way, I think it'd be a lot of fun. And I think it also kind of frees up that bogged down kind of positioning for combat too, because you can move kind of your homies around, you can take hits, you can kind of be a little bit more, and I think it just also adds that realistic avenue of like, if my wizard is getting the shit kicked out of him, I'm not gonna stand there and go, that's crazy, and then just let him get murdered. It's like I'm gonna do something to
yeah, I'm gonna try and stop him from getting shivved in the back alley.
yeah,
man.
exactly. So
You could see, because I'm an ass, I could absolutely see me getting my ass beat as I'm in a hallway, and the person next to me about to get hit behind me, and me using my reaction to take his place to get myself out of the worst situation, to take that one hit and just shoving them in the hallway. I could see me doing that every combat.
that'd be amazing.
Oh,
That'd
but
be
that
amazing.
adds an interesting dynamic to the party too,
Contested.
of like people know that you're gonna do that. So yeah, instead of you swapping places with them, suddenly they're using their reaction to like pull up, because they're like, no, I'm not. I know you're taking this attack from me, but you're throwing me into a
Yeah,
pit of goblins,
you both
bro.
get
I'm not
hit.
doing this.
Yes.
Save me, brother!
Yeah.
I do see your next point, Jared. I'm a little curious about it because swapping weapons is an object interaction.
Okay, so for my next one, I have changing equipped items. So you can use your reaction to swap a currently wielded weapon or item for another that is appropriately in an appropriately equipped slot. See weapons, quivers, shields under the equipment section for more details on weapon slots. So without getting too far into it, because I do want to kind of highlight like unique kind of rulings, obviously in a later episode. But long story short, essentially what I do is I have it so each character can have a certain amount of weapons equipped to them. What properties they have kind of adjusts certain things, but essentially you can have a certain amount of weapons kind of adorned. And so what this would do is this lets you switch between those equipped items as a reaction, because it'd be like you drawing something out of a sheath, or like throwing up your hand axes, or swapping things out. And so that's yeah. I'll tell me what you think.
So instead of it being an object interaction to say drop this, pick up this, it's just like you could use a reaction and just like either fully sheath redraw this, or
exactly. And the reason why I rule it like that is a reaction, because in the weapons, quivers, and shields category, if you want to take out something out of your bag or something not readily available, it is an action to do that. But this kind of gives more agency, because like if you're an adventurer, generally you'll have like a sword, a bow, or a sword and a couple knives, something like that. And I feel like I want to give like agency to the fact that you have those ready. Like you are obviously proficient in your items that you have equipped on you, and so it'd be a quick reaction to switch through those without it being like a detriment of like, yeah, drop my weapon.
I will be right back. I'm still listening. I just need to go take care of something real quick.
You're good.
Gonna go piss real good and hard.
Yeah, you go take a fat you go take a fat wee, bro. Wait, where do you go?
No, I'm just annoyed of hearing my cat scream at the other side of my door, so I'm gonna go feed him.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's
Gotcha.
what I'd say if I had a pee too. Hey, there he is.
He's got the monster.
Good cover. I like that as a reaction, because my understanding is you're doing away with a free object interaction and just like drop.
Exactly.
Or yeah, okay. So I like that, because I think.
What's up, Scarlet Blake?
Yeah, hey.
Go ahead.
I keep forgetting we're streaming.
Yeah, exactly. It's just casual vibes.
That's how it is. That's the best way to do it, really. But I do like things like that, because realistically, D&D combat, there isn't many situations where, like, you might have a situation where the fighter or the ranger switches from a ranged weapon to a melee weapon.
Right.
But those really are few and far between, and oftentimes you have people meant for a ranged encounter, people meant for a melee encounter, and you guys, at least in our party, certainly, before we talk about the lore, the investigating, the role play we're going to do, the first thing that comes up is like, all right, in combat, here's how it's going to go. You're stacked up with this guy, you're in the backlines, So I think having it so like, oh, if I want to switch to my bow because this situation occurred, you're still able to do it. You still have the ability to do it, but it's not just like a freebie, essentially. Which object interaction is a freebie, more or less. At least it comes up far less than anything else we discussed. So having it like, oh, you have to consume your reaction. It's like, well, you're doing a meaningful thing to switch your weapon.
Exactly.
I like that too, because a lot in like home games and stuff like that, rather than stowing my weapon, I'll spend a lot of time just like stabbing it into the ground next to me or something, or keeping it out, because the object interaction to stow and redraw a new one would take the whole thing. But instead, I can just like drop my weapon and draw a new one, and so having a reaction where instead of having to stick my hand axe into a tree next to me so I can come grab it later, I can put it away, and then while it's something's happening and someone's coming up close to me, like, oh, I need to pull my sword out, so I'll draw my sword as someone's running up on me, kind of deal.
And I think that also plays into kind of some things we talked about with disengaging and somewhat limiting opportunity attacks. Whereas, like, if combat becomes a lot more movement-based, where you're able to move around freely, dropping that axe into the tree, and then a situation comes up where you need to flee, now you're down an axe.
Exactly.
Or if you're doing it like that. But now with you're able to just draw weapons stow, the situation where you need to run is no longer, but I'm going to lose my, +1 hand axe, which I don't think has ever existed.
Probably not. But going back to
as someone who has owned a +1 hand axe,
my gosh, you're one of
those.
I lost hey, we're doing good.
So
we're doing good. We're doing good. We're
just
chit
off the side of a mountain, dude, and I was like, because I missed my attack and it just went flat. I was like, and
you know what? Hey, rightfully so, because the +1 hand, fuck that. But going back to also to what we were saying about 10-second turns in combat, this also kind of gives a little bit more like realistic kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like having 10 seconds, having that little bit of extra time makes this a little bit less like, oh, because if a lot of these reactions, if you had 6 seconds in combat, dude, you're moving faster than light, bro. You'd be like just like sprinting around, doing backflips, doing attacks, like switching your weapons, freaking interceding. It's like, holy shit, like that's where like
a monk with haste.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, and that's where I think just adding a little bit of time to the rounds just also gives a lot more of like, just like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense. And like this, you know, this works. Than being like, how would that? Oh wait, if you do 1 second on, it's like, okay, shut up. Like we'll just make it 10 seconds. Call it. Like
we did the math, and I have had a player almost break the speed of sound because of the amount that they could move as a monk in a single turn.
Yeah, no,
it's
exactly.
Like, there's no way that you're going to like break the speed of sound and then go ham on someone with 4 attacks in 6 seconds.
Yeah, no, 6 seconds impossible. 10 though, now we're talking. 4 more seconds. That is everything.
Yeah. That is now everything. You're barely going half the speed of sound.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah, and that like it levels out more things too. Of like, we did test it the other day. We were measuring out like 30-foot runs and doing 60-foot like back and forth and timing it out to be like, is it realistic for you to run back and forth and then like swing your weapon? And it is, but it's not realistic to run back and forth, swing your weapon, and cast a spell all in that same exact turn. Like there's
bullshit. I'll tell you what.
And Connor's over here advocating, hey, what if we cast 2 spells this turn?
Yeah, 2 spells a turn, you know. Bonus action dash, you know, go ahead and cast haste as one of them. You know,
I do really like the scrolls idea, and I think maybe like outside of like the stream and like mechanically writing that down, I think that's cool. We should probably
that's a really cool idea. I like that a lot. Yeah.
But yeah, I think. Go ahead. What's up, Logan?
I was just gonna say wherever you're going next.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the last reaction that I just have recovering a toss, which is what we mentioned earlier, kind of going off the bonus action. I had, if you are the target of the tossing an item bonus action and the creature that was throwing the item / object fails their skill check by 3 or less, you can expend your reaction to make a DC 10 Dexterity saving throw to snag the item out of the air and gain possession of it.
I would like that if also you could try, if you were proficient doing sleight of hand, just because sleight of hand is very underutilized. So
okay.
Just that was the kind of like a slick, you know, like
it's
like you weren't catching a baseball, you're being slick, and you're like catching
I'm trying to,
you know what I mean?
Okay, I kind of like that. Maybe and I'm always a fan of like choices. If you like make a dexterity saving throw, or if you have sleight of hand, like, because then it's like, oh, I get this cool thing because I'm proficient, or I have this skill that I don't ever fucking use. Let me do it now, where there's now actual relevant time to do that.
It's
especially
like,
if you have expertise in it too, because then you're like, oh, I've used this for pickpocketing and lockpicking for sleight of hand. But having expertise and then having something like fly past you and being really good at catching because you have like good hand-eye coordination with that's super good.
Yeah,
exactly. So
it kind of goes back to one of those things. I know Logan, you said you played it, but Jared, I don't know if you played just the computer game Faster Than Light.
Yes, I have. I have.
Yeah, well, then you know, like when you have certain characters, certain abilities on your ship, you get like the blue text abilities, like the blue text when you get situations, which pretty much just means you are very equipped for this. Like on a similar notion with this, it's like, oh, you have the basic way of approaching the situation. You can roll a dexterity save, but you happen to be very well equipped to use your other tools to handle this. And though in this case, it's not like the DC is necessarily low. Just like the probability of you succeeding is that much higher.
And that's another thing too that I also was very specific about when it came to the DC 10 was I wanted it to be a 50-50. Obviously when you have skills and stuff, it's not a 50-50, but I also didn't want it to be like impossible. Like say you're not dexterous and you're like, great, I have to make this DC 46 dexterity saving throw to catch this item. It's like, no, the whole point is to they barely failed the toss. You can just, you snag out and you grab it. And to kind of go back to also like the multi-skill thing is another reason why I had tossing an item be strength or dexterity, because I really didn't want, because I feel like generally characters are rounded enough to where it's either they have dex or strength and then the other stats follow. Like if you have dex and strength just dumped, like holy shit. Okay, like I don't know what to say. But
if you have strength and dex just dumped, you plan on literally never walking near anyone and casting spells from 200 feet away the entire time.
Yeah, you're a sorcerer who casts heightened or what is it, like range, whatever, like increases the range of it or whatever. Like you're like 500 feet back spell sniping, like that's it.
Spell sniper, that's what it is. Yeah.
So exactly, so that's why like giving, and then I also mentioned if you have proficiency in athletics or sleight of hand for the toss. you can add your proficiency. So I do add sleight of hand
Right.
there, and I think adding sleight of hand for the recovery as well is a good idea. So I will definitely add that. So for sure. Well,
And anything to make Tavern Brawler better, which is like I think you get I think you're just better at throwing improvised weapons. If you like, I'd let the player argue, this is an improvised weapon. I'm making a weapon attack at my party member. It's like, yeah, I mean, shit, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, dude. If you're trying to like make sure this man gets the book, and you're just gonna huck the book at his forehead,
Yeah.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
It's either gonna
stop
catch
you.
it or it's gonna be embedded. It's one of the
Yeah.
two. Either way, he's gonna have it.
Yeah, can't complain. Objective was met.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about all I have for this at this moment, at least for actions, bonus actions, reactions. If there's any last minute thoughts that you guys or anything on this topic that you guys want to say before we go ahead and call it here, feel free. Yeah.
Not on this topic, but there's so many more topics that we
I know.
started to kind of get
I
into
know,
today.
I
that
know.
I was like, I have so much to go for.
I know,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm really excited for, and that's where
Yeah.
like I think we'll
Knox is
discuss.
excited too.
Yeah, he's like, dude, I love this. I'm leaving. I'm gonna go homebrew some actions and bonus actions.
I know he is.
I think next episode, just as a kind of like a point of note, I think next episode we'll do combat. I feel like this got a lot of our combat juices flowing. And so, yeah. And we mentioned a lot of things in combat, so I think it's only right for it to kind of caveat that way.
For sure.
And so I think that is the plan. But until then, and we will obviously post that and we'll get that schedule kind of shot out on our YouTube channel. Or just check the schedule for the Twitch channel, and you'll see when that's going live. But unless there's anything last minute, y'all good?
No, I think anything I wanted to expand on, like Logan said, is like
Outside
not
the
even
scope.
like it's like it's not even like a side street; it's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, you're
know,
like,
like,
why am I in the
We're
desert?
stuck. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But no,
Off the rails, bro. The
I-
rails just don't exist.
No, absolutely not. But I'm excited to talk about combat next time around.
Also, a song just came on that's called "My Wife."
Oh,
It's
Okay.
I can't currently hear it, so I don't know. But we'll go ahead and we'll call that there. I hope everyone, hope you guys enjoyed the kind of the back and forth, the dialogue, the homebrew. Feel more than free to use anything we listed here, or obviously expand on the conversation in the comment section when this goes to YouTube, wherever it might be. But yeah, feel more than free, because that's what I really like about D&D is people just freaking talking about mechanics, switching it up, because you don't really know certain mechanics until someone goes, yeah, I had this idea, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. So that's why I like this, that's why I kind of want with this Tavernside Talks kind of segment, is to have those discussions and expand our games. So, but
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, but until next time, we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And we will, I guess, catch you on the. Also, real quick, one last thing. Connor is going to be running his horror murder us in the swamp themed campaign on Sunday, 2 days from now.
It's gonna be very brief. It's gonna be one turn of combat.
It's going to be one session, 15 minutes. We introduce our characters, and then we die from poison in the swamp. So that backstory, the 3-page backstory I made, irrelevant. So that's cool.
It already was.
Oh, see, you said that's really cool. Good thing you're not using it.
I didn't even open it. Just deleted the email.
Oh shit. Okay, well, without further ado, hope you guys have a good rest of your night. We will catch you next time, and peace out. Okay, now I gotta find my mouse. Okay, there we go. All right.
Yeah, so say bye, and then the stream runs for another 5 minutes because you have no idea. Where you're
Yeah, exactly.